She said it over dinner, just after a sip of red, like she was delivering a compliment dressed up as casual conversation. Emotional men are better. You don't really feel much, do you? I didn't drop my fork, though I wanted to. The salmon on my plate suddenly tasted like cardboard. She was smiling, but not at me. More like she was smiling through me, at some version of me she had built in her mind and was now critiquing like a flawed sculpture. I chewed, swallowed. What do you mean? She shrugged, twirling pasta on her fork with a breezy elegance that masked how sharp the moment felt. You know. You're steady. Logical. But I don't really see the deeper stuff. Emotion. I think emotional men are more attractive, not the dramatic kind, just the ones who really feel things. I nodded slowly, but inside something shifted, not quite a wound, more like a hairline crack where warmth used to live. There was no anger yet, just a spreading numbness that came with confusion. It wasn't the first time I'd been criticized for not showing enough feeling, but it was the first time it felt like an accusation dressed up in progressive language. I remembered the first time I cried in front of her, 3 years ago, at a service. My hand had trembled as I wiped my face, half expecting the shame of being told to man up. But she had held me then, rubbed my back in slow circles. I had trusted that moment, let it open a door I usually kept bolted. Now she sat across from me, sipping wine and wondering aloud why the man she chose didn't feel enough. I watched the candlelight dance across her face, searching for signs, irony, testing, maybe even playful provocation. Nothing. She believed what she said. She meant it. And I couldn't shake how measured her tone had been. Not emotional at all. That night, I lay beside her in bed pretending to sleep, her back turned to me. My mind didn't race, it filed, labeled, stored. I wasn't angry, not yet. Just quietly stunned, running through memories like data points. Was I really that closed off? Or was she rewriting the terms mid-marriage? I thought about my father, a hard man, silent most of his life. I used to believe he didn't feel anything. Until I found him once, alone in the garage, staring at an old photo like it was the only thing holding him to this world. He never told anyone about that moment. Neither did I. I had learned early what emotions got you in return. Still, I had tried with her. Maybe not in grand gestures or raw speeches, but in consistency, in protection, in loyalty. I thought that counted. I thought that was love. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She hummed while she made coffee, kissed my cheek like routine, and I smiled back, not because I was fine, but because I needed to understand what was really happening beneath that calm surface of hers. She wanted emotion? Fine. I'd give her exactly what she asked for. But this time, I'd feel everything, and I wouldn't be the one drowning in it. I started small. 2 mornings later, as we sat across from each other with our matching mugs, hers floral, mine chipped from some move years ago, I told her the truth about a client meeting that had left me rattled. I walked out of that boardroom, I said, stirring my coffee slowly, and felt like I was 14 again, getting chewed out by my old man for screwing up a chore. She raised her eyes, curious. Why? Because the VP didn't even raise his voice. Just disappointed silence. I realized I've spent years trying to avoid that sound. It wrecked me. For a moment she paused. She didn't reach for my hand or say anything comforting. Just nodded and looked down, like she was cataloging a reaction but not actually feeling it. Still, she murmured, "That's honest." That word stuck. Honest. Like I'd offered her a confession, not a conversation. But I kept going. Over the next few days I tried. I really did. I told her how my chest sometimes tightened before family calls, that tightrope act between being the dependable oldest and the neglected son. I told her how some mornings I sat in the car outside work just to compose myself before pretending I had it all together. At first, she listened. Or at least, she nodded in the right places. But something changed by day 5. I came home early one evening, sat beside her on the couch, and started to share how isolated I felt at work, how promotions had slowed, how I felt stuck but couldn't say that out loud to anyone else. She didn't even glance up from her phone. "Babe, I can't carry all your stress. I'm tired." I remember the click of the wine glass when she set it down. Sharp, final. "Are you saying I'm clingy?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She didn't answer right away. Then, "I thought I wanted emotional. I wanted alpha with feelings. Not this." She stood, not meeting my eyes, and left the room. The word alpha hit like something out of a dating blog. I had no idea she even used that kind of language. And suddenly it all made sense. Her compliment at dinner wasn't a compliment. It was a test. Or maybe a setup. 2 days later, I walked past the study and heard her on a call with someone. At first I thought it was her sister. The tone was relaxed, gossipy. Then she laughed, too easily. Too freely. I thought I wanted that, she was saying. But now it's like, I'm living with a walking therapy session. He tells me about his dreams, his fear of failure, his parents. God, it's like dating a journal. She laughed again. A laugh I hadn't heard in weeks. My chest didn't tighten. It hollowed. I didn't barge in. Didn't say a word. I waited until the call ended, walked into the kitchen, and started rinsing a glass like nothing had happened. She walked past me 10 minutes later, humming, unaware the walls had shifted. It wasn't just the betrayal of confidence. It was the mockery. The private connection she'd chosen over our marriage had turned into punchlines. That night, I lay awake beside her again. Only this time, I wasn't stunned. I was documenting. Each word she'd said, each glance that lingered elsewhere, each moment her affection felt staged. She had asked for vulnerability. She never expected what would happen when I gave it to her, or who I would become on the other side of it. The phone was the first thing that changed. She used to toss it around like it was an afterthought, screen down on the counter, forgotten on the nightstand. Now it never left her hand. Even in the bathroom, I'd hear the muffled ping of notifications. She laughed at them, smiled at them, curled into corners of the house with her back to me as she typed with intent. I didn't ask. I watched. She started going on more walks, evening ones, claimed she needed air, said the house felt too still. Funny, it hadn't felt still until she made it that way. Her returns were always casual, her mood elevated in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. She was lighter. But not with me. I took mental notes. Every evening she left, I wrote down the time, how long she was gone, what she wore, who she said she was calling before she left. Small data points, not to feed paranoia, to track patterns. One night she came back glowing. Not happy, glowing. The kind of subtle high people get from private approval, from being wanted. I asked casually, "Good walk?" She didn't meet my eyes, cleared my head. I nodded, glad to hear it. I didn't sleep much that night. I just lay there, watching her breathe beside me, wondering who she smiled for when I wasn't around. 3 days later, I opened our cloud photo storage. It was something she'd set up months ago, insisting it would help us organize our memories. I remembered that now with bitter irony. There weren't many new photos, but the auto backup feature had captured screenshots, cropped chat images, bits of conversations she'd likely intended to delete after sending them to herself. Most of them were benign. One wasn't. It was a message sent to someone saved as Melissa G. But the tone, the words, weren't female. Her message read, "You get me. I can't explain it. I don't have to explain it." Below it the response, "Because you deserve that. Real connection. Not someone who's just learning to feel." I didn't react. Not outwardly. I simply stared at the screen for a full minute, then started scrolling. There were more. Chat logs, screenshots of long messages. Her venting about me, my mood swings, my sudden emotions, my neediness. She said she was trying to be supportive, but that it was. It's like living with someone working through things, but I'm not trained for it. But the real dagger came in a single sentence she wrote 3 nights ago. I asked for emotion. What I got was a man unraveling. The irony choked me. I had finally offered her what she said she wanted, and instead of meeting me there, she ran. The deeper connection she claimed to crave, the space where you could be honest, real, seen, she was giving that to someone else. Someone whose name she hid under a disguise. Someone who apparently said all the right things while I bled honesty in our own home. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I backed everything up. The screenshots, the photo timestamps, the name logs. I built folders, neatly labeled, chronologically ordered, tucked away behind layers of encryption only I could access. Not for revenge. For clarity. For preparation. I began locking my accounts, changing passwords. Not because she had done anything overtly aggressive, yet, but because instinct told me this wasn't just emotional erosion. It was strategy. And if she wanted to play at being unseen while feeling seen by someone else, I'd let her. For now. But I was watching. closely, and she wouldn't see the moment I stopped playing along, until it was far too late. I opened the folder every night like ritual, not to feed resentment, to stay focused. Emotionally betrayed men often make loud mistakes. I wasn't going to be one of them. I had something better than rage. I had receipts. Her messages weren't even about attraction in the obvious sense. That would have been simpler, in some twisted way. What I found was worse. Personal. Subtle. The kind of dialogue you build slowly over time. Conversations that don't break boundaries all at once, just nudge them, real soft, until you look up one day and realize the line is a mile behind you. She had written to him, late one night. "You make me feel like I can exhale. With him, it's like I'm carrying his emotions now too." I asked for more depth, not someone to manage. That one I screenshotted 3 times, just to make sure it burned into my mind the right way. Another day, a photo. Not of her. Of a book, a self-help title I'd once quoted during one of our longer talks. She captioned it, "He's trying so hard to be the guy I said I wanted. It's sweet, but exhausting." The other man replied with a heart emoji. No words. Just that. It made me want to scrub my phone with bleach. One night, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. I looked careful, like a man auditioning for peace while carrying a war in his chest. But the emotion wasn't sadness anymore. It was clarity. She hadn't just checked out. She'd handed the version of me I was becoming, raw, vulnerable, trying, to someone else to critique in secret. I wasn't just being replaced. I was being dissected, studied like a failed experiment in emotional growth. I began cataloging evidence more seriously. I pulled download logs, noted the devices she used to sign in, traced IP history. I wasn't interested in confrontation. I was interested in certainty. And certainty, I found, is a cold comfort, but a powerful one. A particularly damning thread arrived from an export of her hidden chat app, tucked under another folder in her cloud drive. She had called him the only space I can breathe. She then added, "I used to think I wanted vulnerability, but it feels like babysitting now." I sat in the dark that night with those words glowing against my face, wondering how many men had been told to open up, only to be laughed at the second they did. I wasn't angry at emotion. I was angry at how she had weaponized mine. By the end of the week, I had every file duplicated, stored on a private external drive, encrypted in cloud storage under a new account she didn't know existed. The redundancy wasn't paranoia. It was insurance. I knew how stories like this turned. Twisted narratives, shifting blame, rewriting the story. I wouldn't give her the chance. I spoke less, watched more. Let her believe I was distracted or overworked. She even seemed relieved. She'd smile again, casually, like nothing was falling apart, as if the world wasn't quietly shifting under her feet. She didn't know I was already gone in the ways that mattered. Already planning. Already packing things in my mind, not just my belongings, but my identity. My integrity. I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom. But I wasn't going to leave without making sure the truth had weight. I was done giving her the benefit of the doubt. She wanted a man with emotions. She was about to learn what restraint feels like when it finally breaks, with precision, not chaos. I waited until a Wednesday. Midweek departures are quieter, less noticed. People are too deep in their own routines to ask questions, and the rhythm of domestic life hasn't yet reset for the weekend. I'd already rehearsed the timing in my head a dozen times. The first step was real estate. A small condo, furnished downtown. Nothing dramatic. A short lease, clean paperwork, private transaction. No paper trails back to our shared address. The agent had asked if I was moving for work. I told him yes. In a way, I wasn't lying. Next came the accounts. I didn't drain anything. That would be obvious, aggressive. I just rerouted. Opened a private account. Transferred a fixed portion of my next 3 paychecks. Enough to protect myself. Enough to signal later that I hadn't acted out of anger, just foresight. I also froze a few shared assets temporarily, quietly, legally. My attorney walked me through every step. Speaking of the attorney, that meeting was quick, efficient. I brought him copies of the messages, the chat logs, the file structure. He didn't flinch. Said he'd seen worse. I didn't doubt it. But there was a flicker of respect in his tone when he said, "You're approaching this the right way." I took no satisfaction in that. Only momentum. Each evening after, I moved items in increments. A watch here. A few shirts folded into my briefcase. A framed photo that could be explained away if she noticed. She didn't. I started sleeping on the far side of the bed. Not to punish, just to prepare. On the final day, I timed everything between 10 a.m. and noon. She'd be at her yoga class. Predictable. I packed the rest of what I needed with surgical calm. Left the joint account card on the nightstand. Then I walked into the kitchen and placed a single envelope on the table. Inside, one printed quote, hers. "Emotional men are better. You don't really feel much, do you?" Underneath, in my handwriting. "You wanted emotions, now you have silence." No signature. She would know who wrote it. And more importantly, she would understand what I didn't say, that I had loved her enough to change, and she had mocked me for trying. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave the lights on or the dishes dirty. I left the house cleaner than I found it, as if to prove a final point, that I could disappear with dignity. By the time she came back from her class, I was 10 blocks away, keys dropped off with a mutual friend who didn't ask questions. That night she called. I didn't answer. The second time, she left a voicemail. Her voice wavered between confusion and brittle cheerfulness, like she hadn't quite decided what mask to wear yet. "I'm not sure what's going on. Can we talk?" No mention of the note. No acknowledgement of the half-empty closet. Just a grasping attempt to pretend this wasn't real yet. I played the message once, deleted it. Then I sat on the edge of my new bed, in my new space, and let the quiet settle. Not peace. Not yet. But the absence of lies? That was enough for now. She wanted emotion. But she'd mistaken emotion for weakness. She'd learn. Starting now. By the second day, her tone had changed. The voicemails shifted from confused to wounded, then to something colder, more performative. "I think this says more about you than it does about me," she said in the third one. "You disappear without a word, and you think that's emotional growth?" I didn't reply. Not to that or the next 5. She began texting mutual friends. A few reached out to me, cautiously. One even prefaced his message with, "She's spinning a version, man. You might want to get ahead of it." I didn't need to. I'd already sent the folder. Not broadly. Just to 3 people, the ones who mattered. 2 close friends. 1 family member. I didn't editorialize or beg for sympathy. I simply wrote, "You may hear things. This is the truth." Inside the folder were the screenshots. Her words, her derision, the private connection she'd built with someone else masquerading under a fake name. No added commentary. Just her voice, uncensored. The fallout wasn't immediate. That's not how people unravel. It takes time. The silence first, then the slow burn when they realize no one's jumping to defend them. By the end of the week, her version of the story had become more theatrical. According to a friend who gave me a heads up, she'd begun portraying it as if I was the unstable one. "He's unstable," she'd said. "I encouraged him to open up, and he spiraled." But unfortunately for her, the screenshots told a different story. One friend replied simply, "You mocked him behind his back." To another man, "That's not spiraling, that's betrayal." When that didn't work, she pivoted again. She messaged me one night, a long, meandering apology that didn't use the word sorry once. Instead, she wrote, "I just wanted something real. Maybe I handled things wrong, but I was drowning too." She still didn't get it. I had offered her something real. She just didn't like how real it looked when it showed up crying instead of conquering. Then came the collapse I hadn't expected. The other man, the one behind, Melissa G., reached out to me through an anonymous profile. Just one message. "I didn't know she was married." I cut it off. "Don't contact me." That was it. No explanation. No denial. Just a man retreating from the fire the moment it threatened his own life. She was alone now. The bond she'd chosen over our marriage had collapsed into silence, and worse, exposure. A week after that, she was removed from a group chat with several colleagues. A quiet message was passed along to me through a mutual acquaintance. "She's not doing well." I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. But I did feel a steady calm, like walking out of a storm and realizing your house is still standing because you prepared for the wind. The next time she called, I let it ring, then deleted the voicemail unheard. I wasn't cruel. I was finished. She thought emotions made a man easy to manage. But I hadn't broken. I just left. And now, the silence she once treated as absence, she finally understood it was distance. And that distance? It wasn't closing. 3 weeks after I left, a letter arrived at my new address. Not a message from her. Not legal paperwork. This came from her workplace, or rather from a friend who still worked within her professional circle. The envelope was simple. Inside was a forwarded HR notice, likely leaked out of quiet solidarity. Her name, a subject line, administrative leave, concerns over professional boundaries with someone she worked with. I didn't smile, but I sat down, held the paper in both hands, and read it 3 times. Turns out, the man she'd been confiding in, the same one who dropped off the map the second she became a liability, was more than just a friend with emotional benefits. He was a client, a participant in a group she facilitated for her therapy practice. Professional ethics weren't just strained, they were shattered. It spread quickly. Not because I told anyone. I didn't need to. The moment that letter existed, so did 100 whispers. In her field, discretion was currency. She'd spent hers freely. Now she was bankrupt. When she showed up outside my new place, it wasn't with anger. It wasn't even with desperation. It was something emptier. A woman hollowed out by the collapse of the world she thought would never hold her accountable. She stood there on the porch in a coat that didn't suit the weather, makeup done, but not convincingly. In her hand, a folded note. Not mine, hers. I didn't know where else to go, she said quietly. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, kept it between us. She held out the note, the original quote I'd printed and left behind. Emotional men are better. You don't really feel much, do you? She read aloud, voice breaking in the middle. I was trying to say I wanted more. I didn't mean to destroy what we had. I didn't take the paper. Instead, I reached into my jacket and handed her something else, a small slip with her own quote printed again. But this time, underneath, I had written in ink, "Only until they find their spine." She didn't say anything, just looked at it for a long moment, then nodded, like she finally saw what she'd done, and what I'd become. I turned and walked back inside, not with drama, not with triumph, just clarity. The door closed behind me, not slammed, just shut, fully, finally. After that, there were no more calls, no more texts. The silence between us became a living thing, and this time, I welcomed it. She thought emotion made a man soft. She was wrong. Emotion, when channeled, becomes focus. And mine had crystallized into something she never expected. A spine. A voice. A life that no longer asked her for permission to exist.